Let's talk about fathers who enmesh themselves with their biological daughters. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I spent many years working with victims and perpetrators of abuse, and I want to respond to this question. Can you talk about fathers who enmesh themselves with their biological daughters like an obsession? So whenever you have a father that's obsessed with his daughter, and is super enmeshed to the point where he's um, almost treating his daughter like a girlfriend or wife. Trust and believe that whatever's going on in his thought process is very, very sinister. So you have you can have these fathers that are overly controlling, overbearing, or super involved and nosy into their daughters' lives. And I'm not talking about like just wanting to make sure your daughter's safe and wanting to make sure she's protected and cared for. I'm talking about where you're overextending, where you're acting like a jealous, jilted lover. And so trust and believe that while it may not be said and he may not actually act on these impulses, I tend to believe that whenever something like that is going on, then a father has thoughts of sexual desire and lusting towards his daughter, and he doesn't want anyone to have her. So many predators tend to resource guard. That means that they get like jealous or violent, or they may lash out physically over a person or a resource when they may not necessarily want to have anything to do with that person, but they don't want anybody else to have anything else to do with it either. So they want people to leave it alone. And so what tends to happen with fathers like this are they will I've heard of situations where fathers have stalked their daughters. So they've had people sort of spying on their daughters while they're at school. They will access their daughters' records at school and things like that, even after they become of age and they go to college. So they feel like they have the right to know. There's an entitlement, and there's no disclosure, there's no conversation. They're just kind of going through your things. The father also feels like they can just sort of come up in your house or, have access to your things. So they may freely feel like they can take away your car, even as an adult, when you do something that they don't like, or they'll bust up in your house and kind of, take over your house and things like that. But they may lash out and become physically aggressive, verbally or emotionally aggressive when daughters start to have a boyfriend or have a curiosity in dating or having friends or developing an independence or autonomy. And there was an example of this, I think it was on Trading Spouses, where it was like a black family, and this black father was talking to the daughter, and all they had her doing was like being the maid and cleaning, and she had a boyfriend, and he refused to allow her to see him, and he forced her to call that guy on the phone and break up with him in front of him, not once but twice. And he was sort of berating her for it and continued to do so throughout the show. Another good example of this, there's an old movie, it's a classic movie, and you can probably catch it on Tubi or something like that, but it's a movie with Tony Danza. It's called Deadly Whispers, and he was obsessed with his daughter. He was obsessed with his daughter so much to the point where she started dating and going out, that he got so obsessed with her that he ultimately ended up killing his daughter. This is based on a true story. And there's some allegations that he had dissociative identity disorder. That to me is questionable. I personally, as a clinician, don't believe in dissociative identity disorder. I could do a separate video on that, but it's just not a disorder that I believe that exists. And I often think when people are diagnosed with that, it's a misdiagnosis of something else. But that's my personal opinion based off of my experience. But anyhow, that's an example of like him just becoming so obsessed with his daughter. There's other cultures too where this also takes place and is more widespread and common. This happens a lot in African American cultures, but it also happens quite extensively in Middle Eastern and Muslim cultures. And I love all the cultures that I mentioned, so this is not anything personal about any of those cultures. It's just something that I've noticed where there will always there's almost like a gang mentality of like, I don't want my daughter even looking at another man or anybody until she becomes of a certain age, and even then I have to have complete control and on control over, if she does marry, I get to control that. And I'm going to continuously monitor and surveil her and not give her any freedom or allow her to, socialize on take on any other cultures or subcultures, because I want her under my thumb all the time. And a lot of times, men from Muslim or Middle Eastern cultures will often enlist other men to help keep their daughter in line, and they will allow their daughter to be viciously attacked, beaten, beaten down, and brutalized to keep them in line, and even go so far as killing them. So I've actually seen that. And so it's like a thing where, the mother, everyone is in on it. The son tends to get complete freedom, gets to be a playboy, gets to do whatever they want, but their daughter has to stick to these strict rules, and there's no sense of individuality, autonomy, or things like that, or there's a severe discipline that goes along with that. And there's like this obsessiveness where they're always sort of checking up on her to make sure that she's doing what she's supposed to do and that she's not breaking the rules and things like that. But it's interesting that other people within the family will help to uphold the strictness and will also beat the daughter into complicity and things like that. So that does tend to happen. But men like this also become blind with rage if their daughter does something without them knowing about it or that they disapprove of. And so when they become blind with rage, they lose control, and then they can turn into a totally different person and become totally violent. And there's even been some cases that I've known where men have shot and killed their daughters, when their daughter wanted a sense of individuality. So a sense of individuality might be something like dating outside of the race, or something like that. Or even in the church, if a daughter gets pregnant, then she could be excommunicated from the church or the community. She's basically kicked out of the community. She's shunned. No one can talk to her. No one can assist her in any way. Her mother, not her other sisters, no extended family. Like it's almost like you're dead. So it's a complete shunning and cutoff if you disrespected him in some way. And so these fathers can be very cruel, very overbearing, and very extreme, and very like they're not willing to change, they're not willing to talk about it, and they don't see anything wrong. In fact, there was a news story where a father did this, a Middle Eastern family, where he killed his daughter. And he still, because she fell in love with someone outside of their race, and he found out about it, and he shot and killed her. And I think she married him, but he shot and killed her. But he's still at large today. So he fled the country, and he's still at large. But there's many cases of things like that happen both within and outside of the United States, but also within various cultures and subcultures, like I said, such as the religious community, Middle Eastern community. Jehovah's Witness can also be a community and where people are expected to conform and comply and stay under the thumb of the family and the church and things like that. So I hope that helps to answer your question. Thanks for asking. This is a good one.